Hello and welcome to Strip Down Sunday. My name is Reverend Ryan Alexander, and this is Soul Evolution's Collaborative's uh, kind of wrap up of the week in our Strip Down Sunday offering. So we're just offering just a little bit of insight this morning about what we've learned this week about gratitude. But before I get to that, you may be wondering, what is Soul Evolution Collaborative? And you know what? If you jump on over to our website, soulevolutioncollaborative.org, you will find out about this community and so much more about the offerings that we have, opportunities to become involved, opportunities to be a part of this community in whatever way best serves you. And if you already know about Soul Evolution Collaborative and you've already been playing around with us, which is wonderful, we so much appreciate all the interactions, all the wonderful wisdom that we share each week with the people that engage in our offerings. And if you would like to support us in any way in the continuing evolution of this ministry, you can also make a donation at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. All donations are tax deductible and serve to support the evolution of this community. Because we know the way it looks today, it's not the way it'll look tomorrow or even the day after that. And it's all about learning and growing and evolving, not only as individuals, but as a community and seeing how that impacts our world. All right. So this week we have talked about the origins of gratitude. And I have to admit, when we started exploring this topic of gratitude, it's the time of the year, and often people kind of turn their gaze towards these feelings of gratitude. Often spiritual communities talk about gratitude, and it's so wonderful for us to begin to shift our focus back to that. There's so many things in our world that sometimes distract us from that. So it's a really great time of year. And so we begin to kind of think about how can we go a little bit deeper and really just explore kind of what is gratitude. And so we have been, let me tell you, knee deep in gratitude this week. We've been talking about the biological and evolutionary origins of gratitude. Like, I never even thought about that. We just think about gratitude as, this kind of looking around and being, grateful for what we see, grateful for what we have in our life, grateful for the individuals in our experience. But I had never, and maybe you have, but I had never kind of explored it from this kind of foundational blueprint of our DNA, blueprint of our what it means to be human, and how gratitude is not only present at that level, but how it has actually shaped our evolution as humans, our evolution as a global community. And so I just kind of wanted to share a little bit about kind of my aha moment this week, and like the thing in my brain that just won't quit. You ever get those thoughts? Like, you read something or you experience something in a spiritual community or even in an interaction with someone, and it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling around in your head. And so for me, the topic that I'm going to talk about, or that little thing that I'm going to talk about today, has just been rolling in my brain and then creating like more and more space for this understanding of gratitude. And I think it also, here at Soul Evolution Collaborative, we're kind of in prep and go mode. Next week is our summit, and we're talking about healing the divide. We're talking about looking at the experiences that are outpicturing our world and really beginning to move and interact and shape these spaces of community and conversation where we can begin to heal so much of the division that we see in our world, in our own personal lives, our own personal relationships and interactions, and how we can begin to move in ways that support belonging and empathy and love and compassion, those things that we know are our true nature and that we have forgotten, maybe not individually, but we have definitely forgotten on this kind of global community perspective. And how can we begin to move back into this space of remembering. And so I only mention our summit because one, I think it's going to be fabulous. If you haven't registered, go ahead and do that. But I think for me, it has really opened the door as we've been preparing for these conversations, as we've been preparing for kind of these shifts in our awareness. This idea of gratitude keeps on kind of seeping in. And so for me, I have thought of gratitude, in the past as this kind of static experience. We have an experience, we're grateful. Something comes into our awareness, we are grateful. We have an interaction with someone we love, we are grateful. And in that sort of description of it, it's just like something happens, we're grateful. Something happens, we're grateful. And it seems a little bit static. But what I began to recognize as I kind of studied the evolutionary and biological origins of gratitude, that gratitude itself is not static. That this idea of gratitude, this deep intrinsic idea of gratitude that is in ourselves, is not one of the sedentary experience, but instead it is active, it is moving, it is evolving, it is expanding. And so the idea that really kind of like spurred this sort of like aha um, in this understanding of gratitude as something that is a requires an activity, it requires an action, not only in our lives but in the world around us, was from a theoretical research of Noack and Roque. And they suggest that gratitude may have played a role in the evolution of another form of reciprocal altruism. So when we talk about altruism, we talk about this idea that we give or we serve without kind of an awareness of our own uh, motive or whatever. We give kind of selflessly for the act of giving of another, even if sometimes it requires us to give something of our own self. So this kind of altruistic without sort of motive sort of thing. And so another sort of evolutionary kind of how we see this in the world is something that they called upstream reciprocity. And so this is this idea that when we receive benefits as an individual from something, we receive, whether it's benefits from an experience, benefits from an individual, benefits from just any sort of interaction, that this really spurs us in this experience of gratitude for that. It then spurs us in an action of generosity for someone outside of ourselves or for something outside of ourselves, whether it be in an individual, whether it be an organization, whether it be a movement. So in receiving, we have this idea and this feeling of gratitude, and then it opens us up to then expand generosity and action outward. And then that outward generosity is received by whatever is the focus of that, and then it creates an expansion, and then from that source then it goes further and you see how we go. So it's this upstream kind of ripple effect. And so this idea is not new, I think, because we also often talk about the ripple effect of our decisions, or ripple effect of our energy and things of that nature. But to look at gratitude also as a part of this action in the world. And isn't that kind of what we're talking about when we talk about wanting to see change in the world, wanting to create spaces of belonging, spaces of compassion, spaces of empathy, spaces of connection, and not division. And so it kind of requires that. It requires us not only to kind of breathe in the gratitude of our experiences, but then also then to breathe out. And then there's a breathing in and breathing out on the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And then after a period of time, then it is this kind of collective breathing in and out. And that sounds a lot like the reciprocal nature of the universe that we talk about, this ebb and flow, this in and out of our experience. And so for me, this just kind of cracked open this new understanding of the vital role that gratitude plays in our own experience, in our own personal transformation, in our own spiritual growth, in our own in the growth of our communities, in the growth of our like larger world, understanding the role of gratitude. And sometimes it's very hard to step into this kind of what I call the hallmark version of gratitude, because there's often things in our experiences that are really hard to be grateful for, really hard to stand in that appreciation of. But for me, when I can look at gratitude more than just a kind of a fleeting sort of experience, which, gratitude shows up that way as well, but more of kind of an activity of who we are, then we kind of step into this understanding that gratitude also kind of morphs into this understanding of wholeness, which we talk about. Wholeness, which encompasses all the experiences of our life. And so then gratitude becomes that same sort of activity, that same sort of energy. And so then when we can step into those spaces, then we can understand that gratitude is not this static experience. Gratitude is not this kind of cookie cutter experience that looks the same for everyone. Gratitude is not this experience that is something that you slap on a Hallmark card, but instead it is this understanding of the impact of receiving and also giving. And I know last month we talked a lot about giving last month, but it really is this breathing in and breathing out. And so that's what gratitude becomes. It becomes the very lifeblood of our understanding of what it means to be human, our understanding of what it means to be in community and connection with one another. And gratitude really becomes this kind of social glue. And I don't want to talk too much about that because we're going to talk about that later on in this month. But it does become this kind of this connective sort of tissue between us all. This breathing in of gratitude and this breathing out of generosity. And so when we can step into what is ours to do, what is our part in that breathing in and out, we become participants in this thing we call life. And what I mean by that is not only the breathing in and out and heart beating of this thing called life, but what it means to support one another, what it means to collectively, as a universe, experience this life together. And when we look at it from this perspective, then it calls for us to create systems and frameworks and conversations and opportunities to bridge the divide, opportunities to connect with one another, opportunities to support one another, opportunities to enhance our experience of gratitude and how that out pictures in our world as generosity. And I don't know about you, but for me, like this kind of creates this feeling of ownership to my community, ownership to my interactions, ownership to the influences in my life. And how can I stand in my gratitude? How can I breathe in my gratitude and then breathe out my generosity in all those aspects of my life? And it can just show up in little ways. And so I invite you this week to kind of think about in your own life, where can you breathe in more gratitude and breathe out more generosity? And then how can we begin to do that collectively in a way that really transforms everything that we see and the experiences of our life? So I'm going to try it. I invite you to try it. And you know what? I think that we will see that this experience will literally shake us from the ground up. And we will begin to experience more of this kind of deep gratitude that we've been talking about, and understanding that it is in our very DNA. It is the essence of who we are.